It is a crucial Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs as the LA Kings are in Edmonton to face the Oilers. What do the Kings have to do to bring home a win? We'll talk about that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. My name is Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years, the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for the past 30 years. The LA Kings are in action tonight in Edmonton for a huge Game 5. We know the Kings are coming home for a Game 6 on Saturday. It would be great for it to be a chance for the Kings to close out the series on home ice. For that to happen, they'll obviously need a win tonight. Some lineup news on both teams. We'll start with the Oilers. Stuart Skinner is apparently going to be back in net for game number 5 as he was pulled in Game 4 after he allowed 3 goals on 11 shots. I'm not surprised Edmonton is actually going back to Skinner, despite what Jack Campbell did as his replacement in Game 4, stopping 27 of 28 shots and getting the win in relief. But I said on Monday's show that I thought Campbell, despite his numbers and despite the result, looked very shaky in net. I thought he was fighting the puck pretty much all game long. He did have that huge save on Victor Arvidsson that pretty much saved the game. But I think Stuart Skinner gives the Oilers a better chance to win. I was actually hoping Jack Campbell would start this game. But that's my opinion. We'll see. I don't think either goalie has been great, certainly for the Oilers. I think the goaltending strength in the series lies with the LA Kings. And of course, Joonas Korpisalo back in net for Los Angeles tonight. Also for the Kings forward, Blake Lizotte is still out. He's going to miss his second straight game with an injury. That means that the Kings' third line that we saw in Game 4, Gabe Vilardi, Kevin Fiala, and Alex Iafallo, will stay intact. Likely that was going to be the case anyway, whether Lizotte returned or not for Game 5. But we'll see what the fourth line looks like. Will it remain Carl Grundstrom, Rasmus Kupari, and Jared Anderson-Dolan, or will Zach McEwen or my choice, Arthur Kaliyev, gets inserted into the lineup on the fourth line for game number 5? As for what the Kings need to do to get a win tonight, I don't think these are going to come as a surprise to anyone. But I think first and foremost, again, get off to a good start. The Kings did not play well in the first periods in Edmonton in either Game 1 or Game 2. In both those games after the first period, they were down 2-0. Now, LA looked great in the first period in Games 3 and 4 on home ice. They led 1-0 after the first period in Game 3. They led 3-0 after the first period in Game 4. The Kings need to show more of what we saw in Los Angeles in Edmonton. Better start obviously will help their chances if they could get a lead. That would be great. They have not had a lead on the road yet, except for when they won the game in overtime in game number 1. That was the only lead they had against the Oilers on the road. So getting some confidence with a big road goal early would be preferable. If it's scoreless after the first period, I would certainly take that as well. But it has to be a better first period for the Kings tonight to get a win in game number 5. Stay out of the penalty box. I'm not even trying to say slow down the Oilers' power play anymore because it's so red hot. I don't know that that's even possible. They're scoring at 54.5% of the time on their power play chances. That is outrageous. They've scored 6 times on 11 power play chances against the Kings this postseason. The best way to stop the Oilers' insane power play is to not give it an opportunity to score, and that is to stay out of the penalty box. Now, it may not be realistic to go an entire game in the playoffs and have to play with the intensity and the aggression and the physical nature to go without getting any penalties. But as we have said, it has to be a penalty that prevents a grade A scoring opportunity. Nothing careless, no slashes of the stick when you get it up in the shaft of the stick. Don't put your stick into their hands. Try your best to keep your skates out of their skates. The best way for the Kings to try and stop this Oilers power play is to not give them any chances. So as much as you can for the Kings, stay out of the penalty box. And I would say at this point, I would say all options are on the table. I know there's a certain thinking that you've got an entire season with a certain strategy, and there's not a lot of different things you do on a penalty kill strategically. But at this point, I think I'd be willing to try just about anything. In basketball, they have a defense called a box and one, where they play 4 players, play a zone, and you've got 1 player playing man to man. Maybe you do that on Leon Draisaitl at this point. Play a triangle and one. I'm just saying, at this point, the Oilers' power play is so good. I'm willing to try anything on the penalty kill to mix it up, to give them a different look, to try something different if possible, because what they're doing right now and what they've done all season long, it's just not getting the job done. So hopefully the Kings can stay out of the box as much as possible, but when they do take a penalty, they've got to try and do something to slow down that power play for the Oilers, because it's such a big equalizer in things. And we're talking more about that as far as what the Kings are going to do. I mentioned Leon Draisaitl. He's killing the Kings right now. He's just absolutely a beast. 5 goals, 4 assists in 4 games for 9 points. He has been the reason the Oilers have had their 2 wins and the reason they've been in position to win the other games as well. Connor McDavid is obviously great. We know he's going to be the MVP, but at this point, he's not the MVP of this series for the Oilers. It is Leon Draisaitl. So anything the Kings can do to try and slow him down, got to do it. Those are the 2 big reasons the Oilers have had success against the Kings. Leon Draisaitl being dominant and their power play being dominant. The Kings' third line, which I referenced earlier, has to be a factor in tonight's game. Gabe Vilardi, Kevin Fiala, Alex Iafallo, they look great in game 4. So excited to have Fiala back. I think he definitely brings a different dynamic to the entire lineup. And that third line presents matchup problems for the Oilers. That third line has to be an asset for the Kings tonight. They can't just be even numbers. They have to be plus numbers. We need to get at least a goal from that line. And I think that would be a huge advantage for the Kings in this game, number 5. The Kings' power play has to be a factor as well. Now, the Kings are not going to be able to match up against the Oilers' power play, punch for punch, but that doesn't mean that it can't be a factor in this. Of the 16 teams that are in the playoffs right now, the Kings' power play is ranked 5th at 29.4%. That's pretty good. Now, it doesn't stack up against what the Oilers are doing, but overall, that power play is good. It's got to be, it has to help cancel out if the Oilers do get their power play opportunities, if they do score on the power play. The Kings, when they get their chances, have to also convert as well to try and cancel things out and keep it as even as possible. The Kings' power play, I think, needs to be a factor tonight. I said it on Monday's show. I think the Kings right now, with Fiala and Vilardi back, I think they're a better 5-on-5 team than the Oilers. I think the Kings have the advantage in net, regardless of who the Oilers decide to start. But the best player on the ice is Leon Draisaitl, and Edmonton has the best power play, and it's been a huge advantage for them. So try to limit what the Oilers do well and try to do what you do well. It's kind of basic hockey, but that's going to be the key for the Kings tonight, to try and get a win, get a good start, limit the opportunities for the Oilers' power play. Try your best to do something to keep Leon Draisaitl from being such a huge factor. The third line for the Kings needs to be a presence in this game, and the Kings' power play needs to also step up as well and try and cancel out that Oilers' power play a little bit. If the Kings can do that, I think that we can see a positive result in game number 5. But again, I think all those things need to come into play. Good start, third line, be assertive and get something on the power play. And maybe we'll see a potential for a game 6 closeout on home ice on Saturday. So face-off tonight is set for 6:30. The broadcast locally is on KCOP channel 13 in Los Angeles. I don't know exactly how that's possible. Nationally, it will be on ESPN if you're not in the LA area. But I don't get this. How does a Kings playoff series or a playoff game, how does that not get precedent over an Angels regular season game? Okay, you've got 2 Bally's sports channels, which carries the Kings, the Clippers, and the Angels. The Clippers playoff game tonight will be on one of those Bally's channels. Okay, that makes sense. But the Angels-A's game is going to be broadcast over a Kings-Oilers playoff game. How does that make any sense? That's ridiculous. I'm sure there's language in contracts and all that kind of stuff that is the reason why. But pretty ridiculous, in my opinion, that a Kings playoff game has been relegated to a local TV channel, KCOP channel 13. And the Valley's going to show A's Angels game 20 something of 100 something. I just, as a Kings fan and as a hockey fan in Los Angeles, I know we're sort of used to being kind of a second class citizen. Maybe we're a little overly sensitive on these types of things, but it really bothers me that a Kings playoff game is not being shown on Valley Sports locally, that we have to go find it on channel 13 somewhere, and that a regular season baseball game is going to be broadcast instead. Well, you can always hear the radio call of the LA Kings on Sirius XM. It is the LA Kings against the Edmonton Oilers tonight, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Catch every moment of the Kings' hometown broadcast with Sirius XM on the SXM app. Search LA Kings. We're obviously hoping the Kings get a win tonight, but unfortunately, there was another team in the Kings family that season has come to an end. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but first, this episode of Locked On LA Kings, your team every day, is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talented roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Indeed does the hard hiring for you. Sponsor a job, and they'll match you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description right when you post it. With Indeed, you can start hiring fast. Over 3 million businesses worldwide use Indeed to hire great, talented people. Indeed knows when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application price not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. While the LA Kings season goes on, and hopefully will go on for a while longer, the Ontario Reign, the Kings AHL affiliate, had its season come to an end this past Friday. Obviously, we have been very busy focusing on the LA Kings and the Stanley Cup playoffs, but now that we have a moment to update you on the season for the Reign, we wanted to do that. Ontario lost to the Colorado Eagles 6-4 this past Friday. They were swept out of the best of 3 opening round in the AHL playoffs, losing 2-0. It was an up and down season for the Reign, who finished their first season under former LA Kings assistant coach Marco Sturm with a 34-32-5-1 record. They finished 6th in the Pacific Division. As far as some individuals, veteran TJ Tynan led the Reign with 81 points, good enough for 3rd in the AHL. His 73 assists were most in the AHL. Elias Anderson had a solid year with Ontario. He led the Reign in goals with 31, good enough for 5th in the league. Samuel Fagemo had 23 goals. Tyler Madden had 20 goals. Those were your 3 20-plus goal scorers for the Reign this season. As far as Elias Anderson, former first-round pick of the New York Rangers, I'm skeptical he will ever have an impact on an NHL roster, but he is 24 years old. He did have a fine season in the AHL. We'll see what he can do coming into training camp next year, and see if he can make an impact as far as being a depth forward for the LA Kings. But there are younger players that are kind of in front of him in line that need to see NHL minutes probably in the near future as well. And if you think the 31 goals for Elias Anderson is impressive, and I'm not saying it isn't, just keep in mind that the leading goal scorer in the AHL this season was former LA King Andy Andrioff, if you remember him. So, 30 goals at the AHL, I'm not trying to disparage it, but it may not exactly be what you think it is. So, again, though Elias Anderson did what he was asked to do, he went down to the AHL, had a good season, and we'll see if maybe he gets an opportunity in training camp next year to try and win a roster spot. It's unlikely, but he is still younger, and we'll see. As far as other notables this season for the Ontario Reign, defenseman Jordan Spence led all Reign defensemen in points with 45. He had 41 assists. The 23-year-old Spence is ready to see more time in the AHL, but he has obviously been hurt by the logjam of right shot defensemen that the LA Kings have. And with Brant Clark joining the Kings next season, it's going to be very interesting to see if Jordan Spence has a chance to try and crack the LA Kings lineup next season, or if he'll continue to be over ripening, I guess you would say, on the vine at the AHL level. He certainly gives them some great depth and some insurance if there are any injury issues. But right now, just a wealth of talent on the right side on defense for the LA Kings. But I've mentioned it before. I'm a huge Jordan Spence fan. I would like to see him get more of an opportunity, but that would probably mean that somebody else would have to be shipped out. And that's something we'll talk about more in the offseason. A former first-round pick for the LA Kings, Alex Turcotte, had another frustrating season in the AHL. He only appeared in 32 games, finished with 6 goals and 11 assists. The 22-year-old, once again, had injury issues that have affected him ever since he's turned pro. Hopefully, he can be healthy to hit the reset button and go into rookie camp and training camp this offseason to get ready to start a full healthy year at the AHL level. That was something that didn't happen this year. He didn't participate in developmental camp. He didn't participate in rookie camp. He didn't participate in training camp. So kind of was, up against the 8 ball to start. So for Alex Turcotte, the book hasn't closed on him as far as maybe being a potential NHL player at some point. But again, he just needs to stay healthy, show what he can do. And hopefully that starts with a good offseason, being healthy for all the development camp, the training camp, rookie camp, all that stuff. And then we'll see where he is for the start of the season next year. In his first AHL season, forward Martin Chromiak finished with 15 goals and 13 assists, 28 points in 55 games. Not a bad first pro season for Martin Chromiak. And of course, the biggest name to check in on is, of course, goalie Cal Petersen. After being demoted to the AHL in an attempt to find his game, Cal continued to struggle. Now, certainly the team in front of him wasn't great, and that, a goaltender can only be as good as the team in front of him as well. That's part of the issue, but Cal Petersen's record with the Ontario Reign this season, 16, 20, and 4, 2.88 goals against average, and a 904 save percentage. Those numbers at the AHL level are not great. Very pedestrian, I would say. What Cal Petersen's future is with the LA Kings organization is certainly up in the air. He is still under contract for 2 more seasons at $5 million per season. And even if he plays in the AHL next season, a portion of that salary will count against the Kings salary cap. So again, the future of Cal Petersen, one of the more interesting storylines that we're going to talk about this offseason and heading into next season. But that's for another day right now. By the way, Cal Petersen has been called up by the LA Kings. He is on their roster at the moment as an emergency third goalie, and no disrespect intended, but here's hoping we don't see Cal Petersen in a Kings uniform this postseason. Sticking with the goaltending theme and what the future in net might hold for the LA Kings, the Kings did sign goaltender Eric Portillo to a 2-year entry-level contract over the weekend worth $1.75 million. Portillo is 22 years old. He was acquired in a trade from the Buffalo Sabres in March for a third-round pick in this year's draft. He just finished his junior season at the University of Michigan, helping the Wolverines reach the Frozen Four, the national semifinals in U.S. men's college hockey. Finished his season at Michigan with a record of 25, 11, and 2, goals against average of 3, and a 908 save percentage. He's 6'6", 220 pounds, and a native of Sweden. We've touched on it a little bit, but the long-term future in net for the LA Kings certainly is not settled, to say the least. There are no real solid NHL prospects at this point. There's no goalie of the future that the Kings have kind of identified that are in the organization. Matt Villalta, who ended up being the backup to Cal Petersen in Ontario, is 24 years old. His contract is up. What they're going to do with him, I would assume they're going to let him go. And Portillo would be the goaltender in the AHL next season, but that's up in the air. But again, Eric Portillo, signed by the LA Kings, certainly a guy who had an impressive college career, and we'll see what he can do at the pro level. And whether he's the answer long-term for the Kings in net is certainly questionable, but certainly also worth keeping an eye on going forward. We're going to talk NHL officiating and instant replay in a second, but first, I want to remind you that today's episode of Locked On LA Kings, your team every day, is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets for your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With the Gametime app, tickets are easy to find and buy for every kind of event in your area, and you get the lowest price guaranteed with event cancellation protection. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and the Gametime guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find tickets at the same section or row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, and you never have to dig through your email. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The LA Kings play the Edmonton Oilers tonight, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. It's Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. Catch every moment of the Kings' hometown broadcast on Sirius XM on the SXM app. Search LA Kings. While we have a second, I wanted to chime in on the officiating in the NHL playoffs. And I'm not usually one to get worked up over officiating. There are calls missed affecting both teams throughout a series, and you hope that the missed calls don't end up leading to a game-winning goal. The speed of the NHL is crazy, and the decisions these guys have to make in a moment is very difficult. I sincerely have a ton of respect for the job these guys have to do. And even if they make the right call, they're still likely to hear the chant of "ref, you suck," if they make the call against the home team. But because of the speed of the NHL, I think it is very good that NHL officials, when necessary, can go to video review to get a second look at things in certain situations. Yes, we want them to get the call right as much as possible, and replay can be a valuable tool, especially when you're judging things like major penalties or goalie interference, or if a puck crossed the goal line or not. That said, 2 things have annoyed me this postseason in the NHL. Number one is the lack of communication with everyone, the people watching on TV, the broadcasters, the people sitting in the seats. And specifically, when we talk about the situation involving the Kings in game number 3, the Gabe Velarde high stick review, there was no mention of anything. The game had ended, one team celebrating, the fans are going crazy, and next thing you know, we're all just standing around watching the official talk to each other. It takes 2 seconds to crack open a mic and say, we are reviewing if there was a high stick before the goal was scored. That's it. And we all know, okay, we know what's going on. It's not utter confusion. It's not chaos. It's not left to us all guess and figure out what the hell's going on. So that's been something that's been across the board in the NHL playoffs. When there's been some sort of controversial call or something's going on, just let us know what's going on. The NHL needs to do a better job with that. Number 2, if it takes you more than 5 minutes to look at something, that's not conclusive, and move on. I know that instant replay is a reality of all sports now, and there's no going back off of that. They're never going to get rid of it. But if you have to blow it up and do super slow-mo and go back and forth, and if you can't tell, then let's go. This is it's taking too much time. And there's just, to me, there's an over analyzation of things that go on with instant replay. I'm almost even in favor of letting the referees have a second look at it, but making them watch it in real time. Things can change when you slow them down and you blow them up, and it's just unrealistic to think that those things that happen in real time should be judged in super slow-mo or blown up. I know we want to get the calls right as much as possible, but instant replay was designed to overturn clearly blown calls, right? And if you have to look at it for 10 minutes and you got to blow it up and look at it in super duper slow motion, that's not what it was intended to do. Move on. There's an easier way to do this, and it seems like the NHL, despite good intentions, can't get out of their own way. And it's not just the NHL; it's other sports as well. So that's my gripe on the NHL officials. Like I said, on the whole, I think they do a pretty good job. I think they get it right most of the time. The speeds of the NHL, especially playoff hockey, are crazy. So I am glad that there are times when they get a second chance to look at things. I think it helps, and I think it's a good idea, but it also can go too far. And in that case of the Gabe Velarde high stick, I mean, what? There's no way there's any conclusive evidence, and we just need to move on. If you have to watch it for more than a couple of minutes, then it's not conclusive, right? You need to see. We need to all watch our couch, and I know you want to see a few different angles of it. I get that, and that takes some time. But if we can all sit on our couch and say, "Oh, that's clearly not a goal," or "That's clearly a high stick," fine. But if you can't, if you're sitting there and you're watching, and you're like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe. Oh, wait, that angle kind of possibly looks like it might have changed direction a little bit." No, that's not conclusive. Move on, and that's it. Instant replay, I know, is here to stay, but it's just sometimes it gets a little bit ridiculous. All right. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked on LA Kings every day, want to let you know what's coming up for the rest of the week. Obviously, Wednesday's show will be a full recap of Game 5, which we hope is a Kings victory. On Thursday, we are going to have a yet to be determined special guest, but it's going to be great, whoever it is. And on Friday, we're going to preview Game 6. Again, a 3-day layoff between Games 5 and 6. I assume it's because of availability of Crypto.com Arena. But on Friday, preview of Game 6. Hopefully, it's a closeout situation for the Kings. But also on Friday, a LA Kings fan feedback show. Again, let's fill up that email inbox. If you want to send an email on anything going on with the LA Kings in the playoffs, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. Of course, you want to leave comments on the YouTube channel below. That's certainly a great way to do it as well. If you want to stay interactive with the show, we are on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great day. Excited for game number 5. We're talking about it tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.